Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today who's going to help you to really understand things that you need to learn all along the way. Cheryl China grew up in Rhode Island with her parents and 2 younger brothers. As a young girl, Cheryl dreamed of moving to New York City to become a court stenographer. She was influenced by Marlo Thomas and literally wanted to be that girl. Cheryl began her customer service career at the age of 16 as a waitress in a coffee shop. Unfortunately, her dreams of moving to New York never came to fruition as life got in the way, as it sometimes does. Instead, she found herself a single mom working various jobs to make ends meet and going to school at night. She worked for an import-export company, worked in a jewelry department store at a local store, and then also worked in a soap company. All were jobs that helped her pay bills, but none were her passion. Then in 1998, Cheryl began her career at Citizens Bank as a call center specialist. She immediately felt like she had found her place. She loved everything about the call center. The customer interactions, the constant learning, and the team camaraderie. Banking and call center life were completely new to her, and although she didn't realize it, they were exciting times in banking. The banking industry began rolling out a new way to bank, online banking, so there was constant learning and adding of new skills for everyone. Everything was changing so quickly. There's no such thing as boredom in a contact center. She volunteered for any opportunity to learn and lead. Cheryl started building her brand and reputation without even realizing it. She developed a reputation as a problem solver and could find the answer to fix customer issues. It wasn't always easy, and there were definitely challenges. Customers weren't always happy, schedules weren't always perfect, and most days there just wasn't enough time in the day to get things done. Yet soon she learned this is how you discover and grow. Cheryl is currently the director of card services at Citizens Bank and is responsible for the day-to-day servicing of customer experiences. Cheryl tries daily to live her life based on the 4 agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. Cheryl still lives in Rhode Island with her husband, Leon, but dreams of retiring to much warmer climates in a few years. Cheryl China, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I sure am. Yay. Let's do this.
I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but if you could share with us, what you're going to share today, how it impacts the customer experience.
So there's many things that I've learned along the way, but first and foremost, every single time you're dealing with a customer, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. I know, cliche, it sounds, like we've heard that 100,000 times, but really and truly you do. And when you're talking about customer service and things that you've kind of learned along the way, everything that you do in life has kind of led up to a certain moment. So I jokingly kid around and talk about these kind of 9 things that I've learned along the way. But there's a few of them that I think that would be really important lessons that I think that would help your audience as well.
So please share.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the first 2. Probably the first 2 that I think are the most important. So I'm one of the things I probably didn't add in the bio at the very beginning here is I'm also a Catholic schoolgirl. So anybody out there in your audience, I joke about it, Catholic schoolgirl, nuns, and way back in the day, they teach you're supposed to be perfect. Well, you know what? That was kind of ingrained in me. There was a lot of Catholic school guilt growing up kind of thing. But I've learned now that you can't let perfection hold you back. And I've done that. So for instance, I might look at a job and I look at that job and I think I have to have 100% of those qualifications, but I don't. And I think, I can't do that job because I don't know this and I don't know that. But you don't realize that you can learn. You don't have to know everything. And I've learned that as I've gone through my career. The other thing I've learned that I think is really important is don't be afraid to ask hard questions. So especially when it's about your career or about money. I had a male leader at one point who actually ended up being a close friend of mine. And I was offered another job in the bank, and it was by him. And he said, "Why didn't you ask for more money?" I said, naturally, I just didn't think it would come with more money because, that kind of thing is ingrained in you. This is an honor to be offered another job kind of thing. But I didn't think to ask about more money. And where he said, you always ask for more money. And I've just never thought about that. The only thing, people can say no if that's the case, but at least you've asked. So you may not get the answer that you like, but again, at least you've asked.
I think you bring up a really interesting point, especially when we start talking about wage inequalities. And one of the things that I always say all the time, especially when you start talking about contact centers and customer service, and while we see certain leaders, the reality is, and speaking about gender, the reality is that the contact center industry is really run by females. It's run by women, right? Even though we may have senior level leaders, which are males, but if you start getting into the operations of a contact center, by and large, unless you're talking about certain niches, it's loaded with females. So when you
sure is
about career pathing and opportunities that exist, even within the contact center, a lot of times I think what you addressed is also one of the reasons why we do have some of this wage disparity, where men will ask for it, women won't. Is that true?
Absolutely true, 100% true. And again, I think it was the way, I'm a certain age group, and I think it was the way we were brought up. Don't ask, just kind of sit in the corner kind of thing. And where women today are so, I feel so proud, are so much better at doing that than somebody, in my age group was. So contact centers, if you even to look at our contact center, the majority of specialists that are on the phone are women. And I think women, for the most part, have high emotional intelligence. And I think that's part of a customer service job. You have to have that high EQ. But I'm a perfect example of that. I started in the phones as an agent in 1998. And I had some amazing mentors through the way. They were my bosses, but they also had peers as well. And I will tell you, without them, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to go on and move up and take the next job and do what I needed to do to get to where I am today. But I think it's really important that I'll talk about it in a little bit as well, but I think it's really important that it's not just courage, it's confidence as well. So it's an emotional intelligence and confidence, but you learn that as you go.
Well, that's true. And for me, I always also talk about the career opportunities that just exist overall. Because when you start thinking about what you learn, in the customer care operation or contact center operation, those are skills that all parts of the organization would just love to have, because you understand the customer.
Absolutely.
Those parts.
Absolutely. And I think once you have that contact center background, so you come into the bank, you have to know everything. A contact center agent has to know a little bit of everything. So once you have that background, there are so many areas in banking especially, that you can move on to because you've got that background.
So when you start talking about, your career and you start thinking about that learning, advancing, I'd love to get your insights into really taking the information that is inside your own operation and bettering it with what you've done from the outside. So what I mean is, a lot of times we talk about our workforce not being creative in their thinking, not being innovative, not able to come up with new ideas. But unfortunately, we only stick them in the four walls that we have, and we expect them to, get smarter somehow with just the information inside. How have you found benefit by pulling information from other industries, other leaders, other folks, and how has it impacted your operation?
So I'm hoping I can plug CCW a little bit here because they've helped me tremendously. I hope that's okay. But networking is absolutely key. I alluded to a previous boss and mentor that I had in my life for 7 years. And she truly was amazing. And she saw things in me that I didn't even see in me. And, she is the one that challenged me. I had a certain amount of teams at one point, and she said, well, if you can do that, you can have this, and you can have, she challenged me, and that was so amazing. But she also allowed me the opportunity to start attending conferences. And I was the nerdy person at those conferences that would take, copious notes. And I would not be afraid to walk up to somebody and shake their hand and say, hey, I'm Cheryl China, and meeting people. I didn't know Lululemon had a call center, the Men's Warehouse, the people that I met through the years, with CCW has just been, kind of life-changing from a career perspective for me. I sit on the advisory board today. I've been on the advisory board for, I think this is my 4th year. And it's a privilege and it's an honor to be on that advisory board. But again, it's the networking and the people that are on that board with me. When I go to the conferences, I'm there. I am all there. I try not to look at my phone for email and all of that. I just try to delve into that. And that's what's helped me from an outside perspective.
So if you think about that, and if you were just not getting specific and getting very analytical, but if you look at your operation and how it is today, how much of what you're doing has been because of what you learned, outside of your own 4 walls? 10%, 20, 30?
So, yeah, maybe a good 10, 20%, part of my job was to bring back whatever learnings I could. So I remember hearing one of my first conferences, I think I'm saying his name right, Steve Riddell. He used to be with blinds.com. He's not there anymore. But he was an amazing speaker, and he talked about coaching and how to coach to make it look like you're coaching somebody and not just saying, hey, you need to do this kind of thing. But he talked about it in a coaching perspective. And I sat in awe watching him on stage talking about that. I took that back with me. I did a whole day of the fish philosophy, and Deanna Ebert, I believe her name was. And that was a whole day of one of my first conferences. But I took all of that back with me, again, taking notes all day long. So pieces of what I've learned at these conferences has absolutely come back with me into the call center environment.
So if you were to say, that there was one thing that you guys are doing right now that seems to stand out and that you feel a lot of pride about and you're happy for the people in your contact center, without getting into specifics, what would that be?
It would absolutely be coaching, hands down. So I think that the way that we coach our specialists is it's to help them learn and to guide and to teach. It's not to say you did this wrong. Oh my goodness. We're talking about finances. So I'm in a bank. So, kind of like when you screw up, this could really affect a customer, whether you're giving a wrong rate or whether you're giving a wrong, whatever it might be. So if somebody's done something wrong, you don't beat them up about it. You learn from your mistakes and you go on. And this is a different way you could have said this, that kind of thing. But it's all about the coaching in my mind.
So when you say coaching, okay, and I think it's really important to differentiate some of this, because we could be talking about call coaching, which, some of the examples you gave were just, call coaching and compliance.
Absolutely.
And accuracy, quality assurance types of issues. But then what other kind of coaching goes into that?
So are you talking about from the call perspective or just talking about when you say coaching? So there's also mentorship. Part of what I do is I go to our new hire classes. I used to before COVID hit. So whether it would be I'm in Rhode Island. So whether it be in Pittsburgh or whether it be, the new classes that came into Rhode Island or even with our vendor sites. And I talk about, the 9 things I learned along the way and what it takes I tell my story basically. Here I was, I started in the phones as a call center specialist and now I'm director of credit card serving. I'm an SVP of a bank. Like what? How did that happen kind of thing? And I tell every single one of them, you can be a me when you grow up kind of thing as you evolve. For me, that's it's not actually coaching, but it's a learning opportunity. So, it's telling a story for people to hear and understand. And I've been in your shoes. And that's kind of how you get buy-in from specialists as well. If they know that you've done exactly the job they've done in the past, I get it. I understand it. I know customers can be rough and they can beat you up. Like I get all that. And I think sharing that with them helps them understand like, oh, she can do it. I can do it kind of thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because for me, when we launched the Call Center Coach Virtual Leadership Academy for contact center leaders and emerging leaders is we started getting enrollments from, vice presidents, directors, and I was like, what? It was like, I was a little surprised. So I reached out and I said, well, why are you enrolling in this academy? And because, the curriculum is built around leadership, yes, but we focus in on that, frontline leader, because goodness, when you think about a contact center, there's literally tens of thousands, if not millions of those people throughout the world. And when you look at their leadership skills, oftentimes that really doesn't get addressed. It's more of this is how you manage, right? And it's very different. And so I asked, why are you enrolling? And I would get three answers. Now, one is, well, it's been a long time, since I've been on the front line, and I need to refresh my skills. One is I've never been on the front line, and I've been given the responsibility to be on oversee the contact center. And the other one is, well, I need to know what they're learning so I can, inspect what is expected. And I was like, three brilliant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I took over credit card servicing, it's about 2 years now. I was on I guess we'd call it the deposit side of the house. So I knew checking accounts, savings accounts, loans, like I knew all that. That's what I started on the phones doing. But then I took over credit card. I know how to use a credit card, but I certainly didn't know all the mechanisms that went on behind the scenes. I started and I sat in a class with the new hires to kind of get an idea of what they were up against. And I started out like, why do we do that? Why do we have to? And it's those kind of things that make you understand, like, this is dumb. Why are we doing it this way, kind of thing. So, but you can't do that unless you kind of understand. I still go into the credit card systems now. Now, I'm not certainly not a whiz or adept at it as some of my, the specialists on my team are, but I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. So, but I can ask the appropriate questions.
Yeah. So for myself, I had a while where I was working in a credit union, and I was, trying to do my own learning, and ended up, doing something that caused it to be red flagged in the security area. And they're like, we locked your account. I'm like, well, what do you mean?
What you do? Yeah. Been there, done that. Yep.
So it's interesting in our quest, to be able to find, answers and to learn. Sometimes we will make mistakes, and sometimes other people get alerted.
Absolutely.
So if you start thinking about, you and I talked about the next few years, and, you may be seeking warmer places. So, you've got a run that's currently in front of you. And some people will count down, weeks, days, hours. I don't know if you're one of those people, but, what would you like to accomplish over the next few years before you do, essentially file your papers?
So we're talking about 5 or 6 years now. So, what I'd like to accomplish. So I want to leave behind what I've learned. And I know that sounds, a little bit quaint as well, but kind of leaving behind a legacy kind of thing. But I want to take everything that I've learned, and I've learned a lot, and I want to continue to tell my story, because I think my story is something that every specialist coming into our contact center can absolutely relate to. And again, even if it's a vendor site, so we use vendors in our call center, so they might not be, our colleagues per se, but they're still on this journey of, they could be at the vendor site, they could become a team leader or a supervisor or, a director. You don't know, but it's talking about coming in, not realizing you're affecting your brand and your reputation with every conversation that you have with, whether it be with your peers or with your boss, especially with customers. So it's kind of, I want to take that and I want to be able to make sure that I'm able to leave that behind to others. It's not just about being liked. Everybody likes to be liked, but it's about leaving behind a reputation that people are going to appreciate. It's funny. I didn't say this, but when I started in 1998, it's the same year that my mom retired from Citizens Bank. She had been with the bank almost 30 years, and my dad got very sick at the time, and she ended up retiring to take care of him. She wasn't ready to retire, but then unfortunately had died just a couple of weeks later. So I couldn't tell that story without crying for many, many years. It's so much easier now. But anyway, that was over 20 years ago. But they asked her back. So they wanted her to come back and said, you know what, very sorry what happened to your husband kind of thing. But they almost begged her to come back. She was on conversion teams. We were converting a lot of banks at the time. And she said, no, I think I'm all set. I'm all done at this point. And she could, but I think about that. It's like, I'm going to retire, but you want me back? I'll come back, that kind of thing. So it's leaving behind a legacy.
I think that's really important. And I think, she was an excellent role model, as obviously you are as well. And I can tell you that you're killing me in regards to these 9 things. I mean, can you cite them off the top of your head? Because I think we all have to know now.
Yeah. Well, I can, but I can't off the top of my head. I have my little list in front of me, so I'll go with that. So kind of number 1 is being willing to move sideways in your career. It doesn't always have to be a step up. And the reason for that one is a while ago, again, don't let perfection hold you back, but quite a while ago, it was kind of like the stepping stone to when my career really started taking off. The director of the call center at the time, we had a department in our bank that was it was the escalations of escalations kind of thing. It was the regulatory complaints. It was the executive complaints. And it needed somebody to go in and handhold kind of thing. The people that were running it at the time, it wasn't a great fit for whatever reason. So we asked if I'd go oversee it. And all I thought was, am I being punished for something? Why would I want to do that? Because quite simply, I don't know anything about executive complaints. I don't know anything about regulatory complaints, but they're all the same. They're just coming in from a different avenue, and that's all it was. Unfortunately, with this, there was 2 things. I was working second shift at the time, and when you work at the bank for second shift, you get differential. And I had a great schedule that worked out for me in my home life. So working, 3:30 to midnight, whatever it was. So, this director had said, if you do this, you have to go Monday through Friday. You're going to lose your second shift differential, and I can't give you a raise to go along with it. Very first person I call is my mom to say, what do I do? Do I take this job? She said, absolutely, you need to take this job. So it wasn't a step up. It was a different role altogether, but it started my journey to the next steps kind of thing. And it started when I started making a name for myself at the bank, because people, they may not want to handle their complaints kind of thing. Well, this group does it really well, so we're going to hand it off to that group. Number 2 is don't hesitate to take risks. So I talk about that role. I was scared to death taking that role. But, like I said, a complaint is a complaint regardless of where it comes from. But there's data that shows that women feel ready for a promotion when they know the job 90 to 95%, whereas men only need to know 10% of the job to feel ready. And this led me to that number 3, don't let perfection hold you back. And I think that's a key one, and that's one that I've learned along the way. You're not always going to be perfect. We're learning as we go on this journey. My next one, I also said earlier, was don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. And I think all of us, and I think more so as women, as we said, are afraid to ask those questions. Another key one for me is learn from your mistakes, but don't wallow in them. So in my career, I have 3 things. I've been with the bank. It'll be 23 years in April. And there are the 3 things that I can look back to that I think of as my mistakes. And I still remember those today. Now, I've probably done hundreds, if not thousands, of helped customers and helped colleagues and that kind of thing. But those 3 things always stay with me. Now, I don't wallow in them. I've learned from all of them. But they're always there. And they're a reminder to me that don't do that again. Don't ever do that again kind of thing. Number 6 is always represent and protect your brand and your reputation. So every interaction you have matters. So the opportunity to claim your value and demonstrate leadership presence is everywhere. I always try to think of myself as the CEO of Cheryl China. Number 7 is engage, network, and build relationship. And it's critical for career growth. So again, CCW, sorry, I'm probably talking about it a little bit too much, and that's where we met actually. So I guess it's okay. But, CCW has been a great learning opportunity for me. But even when I go to our offsites for the bank, there might be people I don't know. I always make it a point to go up to somebody, and I challenged my directs as well. When we go to these meetings, is go up to somebody, introduce yourself, say what you do, and come back and tell me who you met kind of thing, because I think it's really important to do that. Know that what you say and what you do matters. Every conversation you have either diminishes the citizen's brand or your own brand, or it enhances it. And lastly, probably, again, one of the important things is the one thing we learned in kindergarten is play nice in the playground. So be kind to others. There is no need to step over people and act like a tyrant to get what you want. Always be respectful and kind. I've always done that in my career. I've never bullied anybody or, try to step on somebody to get to where you need to. There's just no need for that. And it really bothers me when people do. And I've witnessed it more times than I'd like to think about. Well, that's my 9 things I've learned along the way, Jim.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think many of us, if we're not really aware and intentional, we may assume that people just kind of know these things, right? And being able to communicate them and convey them with story, I think galvanizes them more. And will hopefully cause the behavior, because that's really what we're talking about here is like, hey, this is how you need to, really think about the actions you're going to take. And this is the potential impact and effect. And we assume that people already are coming to the workplace with all of this knowledge, intact and in their head. And quite frankly, I used to say jokingly that I've had the gift and blessing to manage 19-year-old men and 65-year-old boys. When I was,
I love that.
True, and you could say the same thing about females. I've had the luxury of 19-year-old women and 65-year-old girls. I mean, it's true. Mm-hmm. We can't assume it. Now, that's not to say that we're supposed to, feel mighty if we know these things and, other people may not. That's not what it's about. What it's about is going back to what you were talking about. It's the coaching and the mentoring and the, helping others to be successful. And it's coming at it, with that mindset. And we have to really convey these things. And also as a leader, I think it really helps people to connect, like you were saying, to you. It helps to build rapport. Oh, I see where she.
Absolutely.
I know where she. Well, thank you for sharing that. However, and I should say that there's, one thing that's also critically important when you start thinking about this journey is, being able to find inspiration. And one of the things that we look at on the show are quotes to help inspire us. Is there a quote or two that you can share?
Not so much probably quotes, but, again, I talk about the 4 agreements. I read that book by Don Miguel Ruiz many, many years ago, and it always stayed with me. I've sent it to my teams, as I've had different teams through the years, many times over, because I just think just being a human being, I think they're just so important. So being impeccable with your word, what you say, you mean. I will go back to the, managing 65 and 19-year-olds. Call centers are just hotbeds of gossip. And let's face it, they're in that environment. And it might be different today because so many people are work from home, but they really are. And it's one of the things that I talk about when I go to talk with the new hire classes is don't get caught up in that, in that gossip cycle, because if somebody is talking about you to somebody else, they're going to be talking about you as well. So don't take anything personally. And that's very hard to do, especially when you're talking to a customer. We used to call it Q-tip, quit taking it personally. But you can't take what their journey is and what they're saying to you. You can't take that personally. This is not about you, or they're not at you, although some customers have done that. But it's more about what happened to them as a customer. And don't make assumptions. I think making assumptions about people, about specific situations is just, I won't even say the quote about assumptions and what that all means, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. And then again, always do your best. So that's all people can ask you to do is always do your best. It might not be perfect, but at least you've tried. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's led to a good life. So, okay. There's times though, where things didn't work out. And you talked about those mistakes that you remember. And for us, we talk about getting over the hump. It was a learning lesson, and others can learn from those stories as well. Is there a time where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
Yes. So one of the times, this was a learning opportunity for me. I was a very young manager, and I was doing a live call listening session with one of my agents on the phone. This is when online banking first started. Again, this was going back quite a few years. But this is one of my 3 stories. So I'm sitting next to him, and I think what bothered me the most about this is the woman that called in, our customer. She ran a daycare, and called us, fees. I'm sure when we're banking, we have fees, that kind of thing. And she starts screaming at my specialist. Now I'm listening live and he's right there sitting. I want to see how he's going to handle it, kind of thing. Well, this woman swore like there was no tomorrow. She was just swearing like crazy. The F-bomb is flying, the whole thing. And she's directing all of her insults at my agent. Now I'm a mom. The kid that I was sitting with could have been my son, kind of thing. And he's just like, I don't know what to do. Like I said, he was mortified. And the more she's talking, I could feel my anger. And I'm thinking, you are not going to speak to my agent this way. I was so angry. So I unmuted myself. I pulled my headset down and said something to the effect of, you will not speak with anybody like this, another human being again. You can call us back when you're ready to speak, kindly, that kind of thing. And we hung up. We disconnected the call. Now, my specialists, the people around that heard it, they're like, yay, Mrs. China, bonus. I'm like thinking, oh, what did I just do? I'm going to lose my job. I can't believe I just talked like that to a customer. She called back like almost immediately, and she called back to apologize. She knew what she had done wrong, but I think back to that right now, like when I think back to it today, I think I could have lost my job over that. I wasn't even thinking. I just got so caught up in the moment that you cannot speak to another human being like this. Now, through the years, I've heard calls that have brought tears to my eyes because sometimes what people say on the phone, they think they're speaking to nameless, faceless kind of people. Has just been horrible. But this lady, too, probably learned something from that as well. So that was one of my bad mistakes that I will never, ever forget. Again, thousands of calls that I've taken through the years. That's one of the ones that stays with me.
Oh, I'm glad you shared that because, that example that you're talking about is something that probably gets heard or recorded or experienced by probably tens of thousands of people each and every day.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that oftentimes we don't realize is that if we're not careful from an employer perspective, that actually could be considered a hostile work environment if we don't protect our people.
Right.
We actually should step in and we should say that's not allowed. From a legal perspective. So then you also talk about the company perspective. And if we want to have a good, healthy company culture that has psychological safety and engagement and value and worth, we should absolutely barge in and say, you're not going to do that here. It's not acceptable.
Right. Absolutely. We have a policy in place now that protects, but we don't even want the frontline specialist talking to our customers that call like that. We send it to a tier 2 specialist or it goes to a manager or a leader.
I think that's beautiful. And I'm glad you brought that forth because oftentimes, we don't talk about those things. We talk about, well, this is how you handle an upset customer. Well, that's there's a difference between upset and abuse.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we talked about, some of the things that you wanted to work on. You talked about your 9 lessons. And I think those are awesome. And for me, I think, that's a legacy well left. I wonder if you have a 10th one that's in your mind. That would be interesting to discuss. Thinking about all the changes that we've gone through with COVID, and it's just a different world, right? Have you
sure is.
Skill that your leaders have now had to actually bring forth and develop because of the new world that we operate in?
Not just my leaders, but for myself as well. I think we're all struggling with it. It's a topic of conversation with our HR partners all the time. When you're used to seeing somebody in person, whether if I travel to Pittsburgh, every 4 to 6 weeks kind of thing, just to even do annual reviews, like annual review time is here, to actually sit with somebody and sit side by side with them and talk about, development and goals and such. Doing that over the phone, I think it's just much more difficult to do. Going out to dinner or meeting with the teams, but being on site and being in person. And you have to really rethink. So I have been fortunate enough to be on site, during this entire time. I was, out of my peers, I'm the one that lives in Rhode Island where our call center is. So I've gone on site during this whole time. I think it's important for a leader to be there. Not all the leaders were there. So I think it's important for somebody to be there if there are specialists that have to come in. And then we did have a handful of specialists that had to come in. So those folks that are on our teams are, my leaders that live in Rhode Island and work in Rhode Island are on site with me as well. So, and that's their choice. They don't have to be, but that's their choice. I felt very, very comfortable being in work. So I'm not worried about that at all. But I think you have to take the folks that, so I have two leaders in particular that are in Rhode Island. They have folks that are home. So learning how to deal with the folks that are home and coach and develop versus the ones that are there on site every day, where you can just turn around and say, hey, can you answer this question for me kind of thing, or having your team around you. I'm a very social person, and that's another reason that I decided to stay on campus the whole time I was there. But having that, it's really an element that's missing. I know that companies have to really look at this and figure out what they're going to do from a real estate perspective in the future. But myself, I think there's nothing better than being able to be with people on site, like missing conferences and, visiting sites. I just think it's so important to do that.
Well, I know you're going to continue to make positive impacts, both at the industry level and at your own organization. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Cheryl, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Cheryl China, are you ready to host?
Okay. I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
From being an even better leader today would be, you know what? I'm going to go back to what I just said would be being with people one-on-one. I really miss that one-on-one interaction. And it's not that it's holding me back. It's just that you can see I talk with my hands. I'm a very vocal person. I'm a social person. So it's that kind of thing that's really kind of holding me back right now. Let's get back to normal. I just want normal again.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Oh, let's see. I'm probably going to go back to move sideways in your career. Don't be afraid to take a job that might be equal to what you're doing today, because you want to learn. It's funny. There's a woman that I've worked with for a long time. Her name's Karen. So she is a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she has had so many different roles in the bank in so many different diverse areas, whether it be, commercial or deposit operations or risk. And I thought, my gosh, if I was younger, I would love to do something like, because she's much younger than me. I would love to try something like that. And I think it's so brave. So, I know all of those jobs were not just roles that you're just going to keep moving up in the company. Those are roles that, moving sideways. So I think that's important.
And what is one tool that you believe helps you in business or in life?
I think networking. I think it's a tool. It's not just a tool, but I think networking and not being afraid to put yourself out there. So, not being afraid to meet people. So, no matter where you are, where you go, I go to these conferences by myself, and that can be a little bit intimidating when you go to a conference and you see this room of 2,000 people and you're like, where do I go? But it's just you walk up and you meet that one person, shake their hand and say, I'm Cheryl, let's have lunch, and, that kind of thing. So I think it's just, that.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre.
Love this. So this is probably one of my favorite questions. So Leadership Presence. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not, but it's by Belle, Linda Halpern, and Kathy Lubar, co-founders of the Ariel Group. So it's an old book. It's from 2003. So when I first started, really going down the path of recognizing I wasn't just a manager and I'm going to be a leader kind of thing. And there's two very different things there, managing and leading. So, leading is, strategic, and managing is tactical kind of thing. But this group is, my copy is dog-eared. It's highlighted. It's beat up to heck. I've let people borrow it. But I think at a certain point, you can't just be one of the guys anymore. You can't just be everybody's friend, and you have to be a leader. And this book helped me on that journey. So it's also about emotional connection and self-reflection. And, sometimes I think, I think of the really great bosses that I've had in my lifetime and people that have been in roles. And I thought, oh man, they're so good. They're so well spoken. And I think about that. And then I hear like people talk about me that way too. And I said, what? You're talking about me? Not me. You can't be talking like, so I guess some of that's there and I don't always see it in myself.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net and searching Cheryl China. Okay, Cheryl, this is my last Hump Day Hold On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
I never want to go back to 25. Let's put it that way. But I think the one, and I don't even know if this is a skill so much, but it would be confidence for sure. So I was scared to death when I was 25 years old. I made really bad life decisions, again, because I lacked confidence, and that's what it was all about. So if I could go back, it would be, you got this. You're going to be okay. And it would absolutely be confidence.
Cheryl, I've had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I have many, folks on LinkedIn, and I think that's probably the best way from a business perspective.
Cheryl China, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and the Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.